Serious, what is the fastest way you have seen someone ruin their life? 15-20 years ago, an ex worked at a dream job type of place. If you make it professionally in that field, this employer was the absolute peak. There is no better place to go. New guy started there, on X's team, right out of university. His first day he went to the company store and got all the gear with company's name on it. T-shirt, hat, socks, etc. And proudly put it all on. After work, team took the new guy out to drinks to celebrate his first day at dream job employer. New guy gets way too drunk, goes outside to smoke a cig, and then takes his penis out and presses it up against the bar's glass window. Penis man's new colleagues, all the bar's patrons, and all their staff see his DX closed out their tab and got drunk guy home. The bar calls the employer the next morning, complaining about the new guy's antics, banning him and anyone wearing company gear. New guy was fired before lunch on day 2. A cautionary story. Edit. The bar was in a never gentrified, always wealthy part of SF. CA. Patrons were very wealthy people. Entitled. Myself, having worked in fine dining in college, I can only imagine the absolute hell those patrons raised about seeing some dipshits while slurping down their third martini. Many of you relate to this story and have shared about not even wearing something as small as a lanyard W company info on it. This is all great logic. Please keep it up and share that advice. It is especially pertinent when your employer, like the subject of my story, is known globally for children's entertainment. Exposing yourself to anyone, let alone a bunch of connected, rich assholes, is definitely not the move when Pixar signs your check. Dude I know, won a $3 million settlement from being hit by a car. Spent it all on heroin and was dead within 3 years. Under 30 years old. Edit. Wow, this really blew up. To answer some of the questions I see in the thread, I don't think he got hooked on opioids due to the accident. This guy did a lot of weed and shrooms and occasionally coke. Even before the settlement, the money just allowed him to graduate to heroin. How'd he spend all that money? Sadly, he had a bunch of addict friends who he enabled, treat them to free heroin at these lavish parties. There was a similar case in a city close to me. Guy won $15 million on a lottery ticket. Dude was homeless basically. He spent all the money in 5 years. They found him hanging from the rafters in a garage of a house he'd bought with the money. A high school friend drove drunk and killed the local doctor of a small town. Last I heard, he was still in prison. High school student, graduated at the time, drove a classmate of mine home from prom, crashed and killed classmate. Driver becomes a paraplegic, goes to prison, gets out, driving disability modded van, gets in another accident, and kills another woman passenger. Second one was a DUI. He was at fault for the first bit. I'm unsure if DUI. I posted this once before. I had a friend that had a promising career, got upset and went into full road rage for a woman who forgot to turn her blinker on, and he slightly bumped her back bumper on the freeway, causing her to lose control and flipping over, and killing the driver and her 2 daughters. Oddly, it was all caught on his car dash cam and a trucker with his own dash cam that was behind him. He is now doing 40+ years in prison. Post update. I wasn't expecting much attention on this story. Additional details that people keep asking me. I can't say we were close friend or good friends. We hung out during high school years. I may have seen him a couple times afterwards. He moved out of state. Most information I got was from his sister. I do know that he is in jail for what he did. Now I'm not sure if his sister is not giving me the full story, but I do know he definitely received high jail sentence. I know he went to college for marketing. I believe he was interning for high-end sports marketing company. Watched a buddy spend his entire life savings betting on the Paulo Costa vs Adesanya. I begged him not to do it, and he lost his and his wife's entire $60k nest egg. She left him immediately with the kids, and now he lives at his mom's house. Edit. While this blew up, so a little more backstory. He had been betting on prize fighting for a short while and winning. Nothing outrageous, and heck I even bet with him on a time or two, because it was smaller bets 1-200. He had been winning, probably made a few grand, not sure how much, but he was always saying he won and showing off his bets. So I can confirm he had been winning and his luck was pretty impressive. As far as I know, he doesn't gamble anymore and is just trying to rebuild his life. He lost his wife but does spend a lot time with the kids. Arrive at work on their first day as a temp at around 10 AM. Caught stealing the boss's wallet at 12:30. Taken away by police at 1 PM. Obviously I'm overthinking this, but boy, it sure seems it would be easier pickpocketing strangers in a crowd. A close friend of my best friend grabbed his 8-year-old son's new skateboard and took off down a hill in Georgia, hit a rock, landed on his head and had permanent brain damage. He lived years before he mercifully died. Had to be restrained the whole time because the damage made him erratic and violent. Wear a helmet. Yeah, my stepbrother fell on a longboard and his friends didn't call an ambulance because they were high. Went into a coma in his sleep and was never the same. Died recently. RIP. I didn't do anything quite as bad as this, but I was trying a half cab nose stall on the local mini ramp. Slipped out at the top and hit the back of my head on the coping. Knocked out. Seizure. Almost choked on my puke. But my mate pulled it all out my throat. Wear a helmet. My sister started doing meth and heroin. She went from super smart to completely dumb. By the age of 19 she was already a felon. No one in the family wants to help her anymore. Cause each time we tried either sending her to rehab or tried getting her sober, she would just go back to it. Was supposed to go to college but now she's 22 and stays at different people's houses and begs people for money. Completely cut me and everyone else off from her. Cause she thinks us trying to help her is us being jealous and not wanting her to be happy in life. Former friend of mine was arrested for soliciting an 11-year-4's favors online and traveling across state to meet her. I never expected him to do that. His girlfriend at the time asked if I wanted to be a character witness, and I noped out before she finished her sentence. Judge made an example out of him and sentenced him to life. Apparently it wasn't his first SA offense. I can't believe she even stuck around to even consider looking for people to testify on his behalf. Edit. He got the girl to do stuff to him in his car. He was only caught after her friend saw pictures of her boyfriend and realized he was way too old to be an 11-year boyfriend and told the girl's mother he was 31 when he was sentenced. My daughter's boyfriend, the 4th of July, 2023, hopped in his car, blackout drunk, to come see my daughter, DUI and hit and run. He is just about to begin a painful, life-altering process. Watched a guy gamble $30k away in a night and then cried about losing his life savings, and security had to get involved and escort him out because he started to get angry at the dealers because all they could offer him was free night stays at the hotel for playing so much, but he wanted free play at the table's slots and they refused. Any money you plan to gamble should be money you already consider spent and gone. My parents taught me a very important lesson about gambling. Never treat it as a way to make money, but only as a form of entertainment. Before you start, budget what you are willing to lose, and consider that the price for a night of entertainment, because more than likely you will lose. Bring enough extra cash for some food and drinks. Leave credit and debit cards at home. Also important, set a walk away amount if you are winning, and if you hit that number, walk away, as Kenny Rogers says in The Gambler. I have seen people I know go from being way up at the casino to hitting the ATM multiple times and crying by the end of the night. Edit. Also, I'll never forget a time when I was around 13 or 14. I went with my dad to a restaurant that was located right outside a casino. As we were waiting to get in, this older guy was coming out of the casino. As he was walking past us with this incredibly defeated look on his face, he turns to me and says, "Kid, don't even look in there. That place will ruin you." He wasn't joking either. He was dead serious. I felt really bad for him. You just knew he had a major problem. Who knows how much money he'd lost over time gambling. A senior girl from my college pushed another girl she was friends with off a 30-foot bridge into water. As a joke, broke her neck and collarbone and she's permanently in a wheelchair. Edit. Holy shit, this blew up while I was asleep. I'll answer some questions. 1. I got feet and meters mixed up. Only, around 30 foot dropped too. 2 days in hospital for her friend. 2 days in jail for the girl who pushed her. She spent the same time in jail as the victim spent in hospital. It's F up 3. The parents of the victim chose not to press charges for. It was not Taylor Smith. I wound up having to change the number for my first real cell phone because the previous owner of that number still kept giving it out. Apparently she had just moved and her old job couldn't get a hold of her to send her last check. Her new job couldn't get a hold of her to get her schedule. Her vet couldn't get her to pick up her cat. I got calls from her leasing company who needed documentation to secure her apartment. Every single day was some new way an idiot was effing up her finances, her housing, her job, her pets, her social life, all because she couldn't remember her new phone number. After a month I finally got fed up and had the number changed. Melissa, if you were supposed to be a massage therapist for the PGA Tour in 2013, I hope you eventually got your shit together. The kid in the National Guard, posting government secrets online for internet cred. Oh yeah, what happened to him after that? I saw he was arrested but not the outcome. He's been charged but not yet to trial. It's safe to say that he won't be walking free for a long time. Have a friend who had a drinking problem and got into an argument with a gas station worker while drunk. The worker tried stopping his car by standing in front of it, and my friend ran him over and killed him. Wife, career, freedom, everything lost. Honorable mention, the gas station worker. There's no gas station job worth putting yourself in front of a moving bicycle, let alone a car driven by a drunk. A kid I went to school with was run over by a driver trying to get away without paying. Company policy was to let them drive off. It wasn't worth it, but this kid decided to try and stop them. For whatever reason. For his troubles he received minor brain damage that completely changed his personality for the worse. He was a good guy before it happened. Now he is not. He was only working part-time at a large UK chain, like Shell, or something. Only 19 at the time. I'm a lawyer. Another well-respected lawyer in my jurisdiction was involved in an absolutely huge property settlement involving dozens upon dozens of deeds, signed agreements, financial documents, yada yada yada. The whole lot, presumably involving literally 100 or so signatures, had been signed off by her client in the early hours of the morning, having no doubt slaved away for untold hours, getting everything ready for the settlement the next day. She must have realized that she had missed getting one signature on one minor document from her client, so she faked it. I can see the pressure she was under and how she probably thought, it doesn't matter, my client would have signed it anyway, and only didn't because they overlooked it. No one will ever notice. Someone noticed, and she went from high-paid property lawyer to never being able to practice again. Just like that. People occasionally ask me to sign things off as a lawyer and suggest I overlook minor irregularities such as wanting me to witness a signature, even though I didn't actually see the signatory sign. Then they get all offended and act like I'm being a stick-up-the-ass perfectionist when I won't do it. My father-in-law is 65, was married to his wife for 37 years and has 3 daughters. The picture-perfect family from the outside looking in. He was well respected in his career field and was also an interim pastor deacon at our local church. After he retired, his health started to deteriorate drastically and he started drinking. This past November we learned that he had fell for a love scam on Facebook and had spent his entire life savings, took out a second mortgage on his home, and opened up numerous credit cards to send this fake person money. All in all he sent them roughly $300k. He was truly convinced she was going to move here from overseas and they were going to ride off into the sunset, leave everything behind, and live happily ever after. Now he is divorced, lives in a crummy apartment about 45 minutes from his family, and is miserable. He can barely walk and has essentially zero control over his bowel movements. To make matters worse, he has very narcissistic tendencies and thinks that none of it is his fault, and instead blames his ex-wife, claiming that she didn't love him and show him any affection. As you can imagine, this has affected my wife, her sisters, and mother immensely, and caused all sorts of problems and stress over the last 8 months. But long story short, he lost everything. His assets, his family, his health, and happiness. I would be shocked if he's even alive a year from now. An old customer got fired from Uber and DD for being slow arriving with cold food way too often. Comes into my bar the next day with limited edition XO weekend sweater plus jeans, new Apple Watch and new iPhone, all paid cash. Says he took out a payday loan for $10k and doesn't intend to pay it back. He'll just cancel the bank account. His exact words, "Who needs credit anyways?" He stopped showing up to the bar after about 3 months. Never saw him again. Edit. For those asking, no, I don't think this is some mafia shit. A very stupid decision by a reckless individual with no way to pay any of it back and incurring crazy debt interest at 22 years old. Crime. Specifically felonies. My lawyer took out a loan forging my signature. He's doing 15 years in federal prison. I would have given him the $5,000. His kid was very sick and I would have gladly helped him out. Well, that sucks. It does. His beautiful child had a brain tumor and I would have given him my settlement. Such a shame and a waste. I testified against him in court, but there were no hard feelings. I understood what he was doing, but he did it the wrong way and broke the law and my trust. My dad had money, but he really didn't like to pay people. The check was always in the mail, lost, waiting on someone at the bank, etc. He finally got busted for a bunch of financial crimes. A few years later, for his second offense, he ran up $20k plus on company credit cards, a company that he had screwed over 10 years earlier, and slowly gained their trust back until his first opportunity to do it again. They reported as fraud, so the credit card companies went after him. I think it was Amex and one other. That MF did barely 2 months, then was back to his shenanigans. I'd do 2 months for a free $20k. Knew a guy in the military that had 18 years in and was doing online classes to get his MBA. He was in his final semester of getting his MBA and 2 years away from a military retirement. Then he traveled 1,500 miles across the country to try hook up with a 15-year-old girl. Spent 2.5 years in prison, was kicked out of the military and his college he was attending. I'm not entirely sure if he could pick up where he left off to get his MBA at the same college or a different one, but that's probably useless for him anyways now, since he's a convicted felon. I don't think having an MBA is going to make employers overlook your felony for trying to have sex with a minor. My cousin, 18F, finished her senior year early, so she was basically just waiting for May to do the graduation and get her diploma. She worked at a lake restaurant and had started hanging out with a bad crowd. At this time she had been smoking a lot of weed and drinking, as well as just being generally reckless all the time. She was my best friend, so she texted me to tell me about everything she did basically. One night she texted me to tell me that she had tried meth and it was the best high of her life, but she will never do it again. Exactly 1 month after that text she overdosed and died. They put her portrait in her graduation seat, and her dad got to walk and pick up her diploma. My husband had a nice job as a high-level retail manager before his store closed. He became a lead for less $ in an inventory company. He was generally considered to be a nice but quiet. You'd see more of his personality when he was working on computers, self-taught, or video games or pool. General consensus was that he was a good guy, always ready to game with the kids. Less than a month after our 6th anniversary, I found a video on our tablet from a hidden camera in our bathroom that showed my 14-year-old niece nude. It looked like he kept the image on the cloud and would add it to whatever device he was using and then delete it. He just missed that last step. I called the police immediately, and he never came home again. They found more images on his computer and a 20-minute video, full front view of his face, as he tries to hide the camera. He pleaded guilty and received 40 years with 34 suspended. He will have to register as a SO and has some pretty stiff rules to follow. No alcohol, no items that can connect to the internet unless he pays for a company to put monitoring software on every internet accessible device. The day I found it, I sent him to work with a kiss. I found the images around 11:30 AM and had surrendered the tablet and gotten the case started with the police by 11:45. I have told every relationship I've been in, husband included, that the one thing that will make me turn you in and walk away and never look back. He truly thought I would never leave him and was all surprised, Pikachu face, when I kept my promise. His actions caused him to lose everything he took for granted that he would always. Our daughter was 5 then, and for her he just disappeared one day. Now, I am watching her grow and mature into a beautiful person. And he doesn't get the privilege of even knowing this beautiful child. I'm sure that separation has hurt him a lot, but you don't get trusted with any child, even your own, after you do something like that. Good riddance. 34 years suspended sentence. A co-worker sent an explicit text to a new hire, using the company comms system. She pretended to be interested and then reported him, with a very long thread as proof. Dude was married, with kids, a supervisor. Now, divorced, kids hate him, works a low-level job. I knew a guy just like that. Had a really well-paying job. Didn't do anything all day at said job. Always talked about how he was hot shit in high school, but he's now over 30 with a wife and 2 kids. Then there was this new hire at the job, a younger woman in her very early 20s. They had some extramarital encounters, but turned out he was a giant a-hole. Who would have thought from a guy that peaked in high school? They got into a spat at work, and she ran to the HR department and showed everyone the disturbing messages he has been leaving on her phone, alongside some D-pics. Last I heard was he got fired, but still came back the next day and chilled in the lunchroom all day. When the boss heard of this weird development, he called the police, but the guy was long gone before the police got there. In Germany, there was a contestant on the show, Wetten das, translated as, bet that, a few years ago. In the show, statements about crazy talents and activities were presented by the participants. The contestants bet on things they could do and get a prize if they could actually perform the self-proclaimed task's talents. One participant bet that he would be able to jump over moving cars. It went wrong and he was left a paraplegic. He has since largely recovered, psychological, not physical, and is handling it great as far as the public is concerned. But the situation will probably always stick in my mind. Oh, and clearly heroin, the shortcut to ruining your own life, as quickly as possible. Bar fight. Heard a loud commotion for about 30 seconds. Some guy thought this guy was hitting on his date. Sucker punched him. The other guy fell down and clipped the bar. The bar had brass footrest at the base. Snapped the guy's neck so loud you could hear it across the room. This is scary to think about. I was 22 and working downtown building high-rises as an iron worker. We used to go to this bar called the Belfry, where they had one of those brass bars at the foot of the base of the main bar table. I had ordered a beer, but when I reached for it, I knocked over this gentleman's drink onto his suit jacket completely by accident. It was a very nice suit and his shirt was perfectly done up and pressed. Clearly had done well for himself. I apologized profusely and said it was a mistake and would pay for the dry cleaning. He went off on me that pieces of shit construction workers don't belong in this kind of bar, and that dumb F that work with our hands should have drink in the alley with the rest of the skids and homeless since we are all dirty bums. I had a short fuse back then and walked around at about 245 pounds. He pushed me and I fired back with one of the hardest punches I've thrown, knocking him out on his feet. He went down and smacked his head off the brass rail, where blood started dripping out of his ears. The bartender told me to leave and don't come back for a few days. When I came back, she told me the guy was in rough shape with a concussion and broken cheek, but ultimately was fine when the paramedics left. I am so lucky that didn't ruin my life because of a short temper. Edit. Meant short fuse, not short fire. Fixed it. Colleague starts out great at new job, gets through probation, then gets out of control drunk at a company party. She makes out with the boss's date and hooks up with another colleague while her husband is there. Fast forward, she's dating this colleague now and their relationship is causing disciplinary measures at work. They decide to double down and sign a new lease together anyways. She then lies about getting poached by a customer to leverage a raise, and when it doesn't work she actually has to quit. Her boyfriend then follows suit by not showing up and ghosting the company. Now he's a stay-at-home stepdad. Oh, did I mention she has 3 kids? After being with this girl for 6 months and they both don't have a job. Kind of a 2-for-1. It took 4 hours. He woke up, murdered his grandparents in their sleep, stole all of the firearms in the house and his grandfather's truck, and fled. I grew up with this dude. He was a genuinely good person. We were friends all of elementary school and most of middle school. He was an amazing friend and always knew how to help someone, but he had a lot of mental health issues, and his religious family believed it was just possession by demons and whatnot. Recently his actual hearing was done, and you could tell how far off the deep end he had gotten. Smiling the whole time they described what he did, laughed when they sentenced him, and had to be dragged out laughing like a lunatic saying, "It's over, Grandpa. It's over." It was during the court trials that we found out his grandparents were apparently him, something the rest of the family seemingly knew quite well but ignored, and they'd refused to let him leave the house despite him being in his 20s and a legal adult. They isolated him from the world, told him he was possessed by demons, and let his grandparents him repeatedly, without intervention. I'm honestly not even surprised he did it. I'm just sad it went down the way it did. A guy I worked with at Papa John's when I was in college bought a gun from a coworker. Our other coworker got robbed delivering a pizza. He told me he wants to see if it works. He went and shot it into an empty developing neighborhood into some trees. The bullets hit a house behind the trees with a family and kids. Nobody was hurt, but they were scared to death. Police immediately came and arrested him before he could even pull off. They were camping out in that neighborhood already, since people were coming at night to smoke weed, have sex and shoot guns SMH. He shot 3 shots, got 25 years in prison for attempted murder and reckless endangerment. First time ever shooting a gun. We were only 19. This was in 2006. I think about him a lot. We weren't close like that, but he's still in prison over a 5-second mistake 17 years later. Really nerdy kid too. First time ever in trouble. I followed his sister on Facebook. He's unrecognizable now. Imagine McLovin from Superbad, who looks like Jason Momoa now, with tats on his face. Sad. Also my roommate a few weeks later was struggling financially and decided to buy 2 pounds of weed to sell with his student loan refund check. Got pulled over and arrested the same day. Got 5 years. Can't make this shit up. An acquaintance. He had a good job, nice truck, mortgage on a nice home, minimal debt, in a relationship with someone out of his league. Before I knew him he'd had a DUI, but his attorney got him a plea deal that dropped the DUI down to a minor charge. A real lucky break. All he had to do was stay the course. He could have walked home that night. It was less than 2 miles, but he was too proud to leave his truck at a bar, so instead he wrapped it around a power pole. No one was hurt, including him. The judge who got his case was furious to learn his previous DUI had been pled down. The judge rejected a plea deal and vowed to throw the book at him. There was prison, then a year on house arrest. His job required a driver license, so that was gone. I don't know at what point in his house arrest he could have started working, but he refused to. His former employer offered him a non-driving job, less money but still good money. He turned it down because it was beneath him. He said the same thing to 2 jobs his girlfriend single-handedly secured for him. Even after his house arrest, he refused to work. He said he didn't want to. Apparently yelling at his girlfriend to pay his mortgage was better than working. She finally got the courage to leave. His parents found him dead. No one will ever know if he intended to drink himself to death or whether it just happened. His parents blamed the girlfriend. Apparently the world would still be graced by his presence if she had stayed to get hit and yelled at. Please don't drive drunk. Not ever. Not even a little. If you're not sure, just don't. And if you suspect you have the disease of addiction, please get help. I don't really care that this person died, but he hit a lot of innocent branches on the way down. A lot of suffering for no reason.